Everybody, Sterling Belikov Outdoors, and we are sitting in a very historic spot. This is the gates to St. Augustine Old Fort, Castello de San Marco. This is the fort that was set up by the Spanish in, I believe it was the late 1600s. This is one of the earliest places here in the United States that was inhabited by Spain to go and protect its shipping routes to the Caribbean. This is such an old, cool, historic place where Europeans first set foot on the North American continent, and I'm here to share it with you guys. Let's go ahead and head inside and see what cool things we can see. So guys, this is the view you get stepping through the gates into the courtyard of Castello de San Marco. You step right through this big stone archway and into this courtyard. It looks like at one point in time there was a well here, and everything was stored here, from people's firearms to the fort's food. You'll see some pictures snapped in here of all sorts of things like the bedding areas, and in here it's a little bit more history. But let's see some of these other spots. I'm looking right now because in all these old forts, there's typically one room where they have food storage as well as ammunition storage. So let's see if we can find that, and I will clip back in. Guys, in the door behind me, there's a room that goes off to your left as you enter the room. That is actually where the Castello had its powder room that defended the whole fort. This place is super neat because it was built and fortified in the early 1700s, was set up in the late 1600s, and changed hands multiple times through different entities and nationalities. For instance, it started out as a Spanish fort, was then captured by the British, was then recaptured by the Spanish, then was inhabited by American forces, and then it ended up switching hands from American forces to Confederate forces during the Civil War. It played a major part in the Indian Wars, both holding prisoners and helping to fight the Seminoles. It is just a remarkably wonderful and historic place, and we are going to get to see a couple more areas. But guys, take a look at this cannon. This is truly what a early 17th century cannon looked like that was meant to defend forts. You see a lot of stuff like this in Pirates of the Caribbean and other places, and you do not get an idea of how massive these cannons were. So let's go ahead over there next to that cannon. I want to kind of give people an idea. So there's my wife standing next to this cannon. This cannon's probably over 10 feet long, and according to the sign, it weighs 2 tons. There's no telling how far this thing could launch cannonballs. But let's get a good idea and a good view from up on the walls, as many people would have been stationed here back in the day. So Sterling Belikov back over here, and one of the rangers that's stationed here at Fort St. Augustine was listening to my video, talking to you guys over here, talking about this cannon, and he actually had more information on it. So I'm going to let Ranger Keller tell you more about the cannon that I was just mentioning in my video.
Absolutely. So this is about, depending on who you're asking, this is a 16-pound English gun, 18-pound Spanish gun. And guns back then could shoot anywhere from 3 to 3.5 miles, depending. Now, they're not going to be that accurate because they're all smoothbore. We have not invented rifling technology yet. But the goal, especially for a fort like this back then, is just reaching out and showing someone, I see where you're at, I can reach out and touch you. If you get any closer, I will be more dialed in. Especially during those times of siege, it shows that we're not giving up yet. We still have supplies, and we're still putting up a fight. So this cannon, now depending, it's a cannonball, not the weight of the cannon, is 16 or 18 pounds, and the ratio to shoot that is always half the weight of the ball. So 16 is 8, 18 is 9. So pretty cool. And the fun fact about bronze cannons is because they're so artistic and because they're so rare, they were expensive. But when they start wearing out, what you can do is you can smelt them back down and then recast them. You can't do that with cast iron. Cast iron cannons that you'll see up top are only good for about 1,200 to 1,500 shots before they need to be disposed of.
So what was the means that they used of disposing of the cast iron cannons?
So a lot of the times you'll see cast iron cannons are just thrown overboard on ships, whereas out here they would just be disposed of out in the marshland, out in the swamps. So because you can't smelt them back down, and once they start getting that pitting, that cracking, or any warping, you can't safely fire them. So if you actually go into the siege room over there, you'll see one of our cannons that blew up during the siege of 1702.
We saw that.
Yeah, so it had a crack in it during that siege that they didn't see on inspection, as well as they double loaded the charge at the time. So it ended up killing 4 out of the 5 cannon crew members and maimed one of the others. So cast iron, cheaper by the dozen, but a little bit more dangerous to use.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned that the cast iron cannons were kind of just discarded however they could.
Yep.
By whatever means possible.
Absolutely.
And the bronze cannons were resmelted, reused, almost like modern day recycling.
Pretty much, yeah, because they have that lost sand cast molding, so they would go ahead, they put the mold in with the wax, you get all that beautiful inlay, and then say that starts warping, or say a crack develops in the undercarriage, you can go ahead and just smelt it back down and put it in a new mold because the materials are the same. And the coolest thing about bronze is that patina acts as protection here, especially with a saltwater environment. When you go upstairs and look at the cast iron ones, you'll see they have that thick paint on them. And that's to keep them safe against the sea breeze. We send those off to electrostatic tanks as well, usually like out in Texas A&M or something like that, because we have to keep up that preventative maintenance because they are that old.
Absolutely. And you know, that's a wonderful thing that we do here. I actually was fortunate enough to go down to Barbados, and unfortunately in Barbados, the conservation levels that we have here in the United States are virtually non-existent over in Barbados. A lot of their forts and their different fortifications that they once had as a former British colony are gone. And it's because of the funding that they don't have. And so whenever you went over to their forts, like the one that's over near the Hilton in Barbados, they've just replaced them with plastic cannons as stand-ins. And to me, as a historian, that's a very unfortunate and sad thing to see. We're very lucky here in the United States that we have places like the National Park Service and conservation funds that can come in and get a hold of our lighthouses, and places like St. Augustine. I know I personally, and I'm sure most of my viewers, you guys on the internet, are very thankful to these guys who upkeep these historic sites so we and future generations can go and see them.
Yeah, the coolest part, the last bit I'll hit you with before I run off to lunch, is the fact that the cannons that you'll see upstairs and down here, these are all originals. The only 3 replicas are the ones we fire on the weekends by the bell tower corner, but all the bronze up there, the mortars in the corners, the cast iron that faces the town, and then even out in the water battery, those are real cannons from the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century. They're not replicas, they're not reproductions. This is a real cannon that really fired at somebody way back when.
That is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ranger Keller, for talking to my
talking
viewers.
to you guys. You guys have a great rest of your visit here today. If you have any more questions, find me, any other ranger, anybody dressed out in khaki. We'd be more than happy to help you guys.
I appreciate it. Thank
Absolutely.
you very much.
Have a great day.
Guys, let's absolutely get up there and see some of the cannons that Ranger Keller was talking about. And I've got a really good idea that you guys are going to love the view that we're going to see up there. So a few moments ago, you heard me and Ranger Keller talking back and forth about some of the cannons out here. He mentioned that there was 3 cannons that were modern reproductions. These are actually those 3 cannons that he said that they use on the weekends to fire off shots that aren't live shots, which means they don't have a live ball in them. They're strictly powder. And these are the ones that are still in use here at the Castello. These are the ones that they fire off, which you've got to imagine would be super, super cool. Seeing this from a boat out there in the protected bay area on the weekends. I really wish that we could be here to see that. Unfortunately, you guys know we've got other things and other plans and other cool stuff to show you. If Mrs. Belikov can go and see, let's come over here this way. You can actually come over here, zoom in and look closely. Right here is the opening of the bay that this fort actually guarded at one point in time. No doubt, at one point, both Spanish and British ships sailed into this protected harbor area and took refuge from the violent Atlantic storms that came through here in this time frame. If you guys are watching this in the future, we're in August right about now. August, September, November are riddled in this area of the southern Atlantic with hurricanes. This would have been a prime spot, just as the Spanish did, to come in and set up a fort on a protected area where you can go and harbor your ships safely whenever rough seas and storms like hurricanes blew in. This is why this fort exists. Early in the history of nautical sailing and the colonization of the Americas and the Caribbean, you had ships coming in from the point that the Caribbean was discovered in the 1600s all the way up until the 1800s, whenever the era of ships that were wood ended. You had the need to go and pull those ships into safe harbor to protect them from hurricanes and storms. And this is why bays like this in Florida were so important to the Spanish and the British later on, and then even the Americans all the way up until the late 1800s. Guys, if you ever have a chance to come here to the Castello de Marco, I highly encourage you to do so. It is a super neat fort. We're going to go around and take some other pictures of some of the cannons. There's some really cool bronze cannons up here. You're going to see some of the cast iron cannons, and the cool thing is they've got cast iron, they've got bronze, and they've also got several different sizes of guns protecting this fort that were original to the time period. Everything from their smaller guns up to their bigger guns, up to the heavy duty cast iron guns, and then they've even got some bronze mortars here. So we're gonna go and cut this video, and then we'll get some more pictures, and then we're gonna head over to the Pirate Museum and treasure. Guys, there are times where sometimes you just need to launch a bowling ball really far. And for that, back in the 17 and 1600s, the weapon of choice all the way up to the 1800s and 1900s was the mortar. And that's what this thing's job was. And you really don't get an idea in videos how big of a projectile you could probably launch out of one of these. That's the opening of this thing, and here's my hand. You could probably easily launch a bowling ball size object out of this cannon. I don't even know how far, but that is exactly what the Spanish and then the British and the American forces that inhabited this fort undoubtedly did with those guns. Guys, I keep saying it, but this is absolutely a super cool fort with amazing historic pieces that, as you heard Ranger Keller talk about, are period correct. If you love militaria and old school military armaments and getting to see those, this is someplace that you've got to go and check out. So I'm going to get a couple more pictures of some cannons along the walls and the mortars that are here. There's some really ornate bronze pieces that I really want you guys to see. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is Sterling Belikov for Belikov Outdoors, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Stay tuned.